of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section. And on behalf of our Commissioner, David Giorgino, and our staff in Taxpayer Services, we certainly welcome you to today's presentation on business tax preparation, excuse me. And we're going to go through a lot of information here with you for the next few minutes. We are going to be recording this presentation, and we want to remind all of you that are here with us live today as we do this that the participants guide is on our website, and we'll be putting another link in the chat box there in just a little bit so you can easily get to that information. So we'll go ahead and begin this whole situation here with Ms. Katie Julian. I also want to welcome Lisa Rousseau, who is the manager of our regional offices in East Tennessee, and our assistant director, Mr. Dan Vinson, who will be here to help us as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn this over to Katie. And Katie, you're going to show them where they can get this
That's
PDF,
right.
correct?
Yep, I'm taking you over
Excellent.
to the website right now. Thank you,
Thank you.
Billy. Lisa, happy to have you as our special guest today. Lisa and I are both based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I'm over on Tennessee, tn.gov/revenue right now, our main homepage. On the front homepage, if you scroll down to the tile Taxpayer Education, this is where you would have gone to register for today's webinar. Click on that and then click on tax webinars. And then right here, this blue bar under register for the event, it says click here to download participant guide. That's a PDF of the today's presentation. So any of the hyperlinks that you're going to see, you can't click on them within the WebEx, but if you've got this participant guide downloaded, you can click on any of the hyperlinks that we have directly from there. So, and y'all forgive me, I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold, so I might hope I don't cough in anybody's ear or sneeze or anything, but happy to have you here joining us today. We've got a lot to cover about business tax. We may go right up until the very end because it's hard to squeeze business tax, even the basics, into 1 hour. But we did our best, or we did our best here. We'll see how it goes. But let me go back one slide here again. Also, we're going to have a recording of today's presentation on our website tomorrow, right on the same page I just took you to a minute ago, where you register, where you can download the participant guide. If you scroll to the bottom of that webinars page, there's a webinar video archive, and you'll find this presentation and all of our other webinars, which I'll reference a few of them as we go along today. Hey, Billy.
Just wanted to mention to everybody, we're going to have chat turned off during the presentation until the very end. We have a lot of people on this webinar today, and we're not going to be able to do our normal give and take during the presentation because of the length of the material that we're trying to get through today. And we will certainly entertain as many questions as we can at the end, and also give you lots of opportunity to be able to know where you can ask for additional help. Okay, so that's coming up later. Just want to let you know.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Billy. All right, so we'll go ahead and proceed here. Business tax basics is our topic. We realized when we were going through planning for these webinars that we had not even yet done just a basics on business tax. We have it on sales tax and on F&E and several other tax types, but it's about time to cover business tax. So what is business tax? Business tax is a privilege tax on the privilege of doing business by making sales of tangible personal property, or TPP, and services within Tennessee and its local jurisdictions. And you can see the law reference there and Tennessee rules and regs reference there under that. Sometimes people get confused about, they think business, the F&E tax is business tax and sales tax. Well, this is the business tax. It's a tax that's called business tax. Franchise and excise tax, or F&E, is a tax that's imposed on certain businesses. Sales tax is a tax type that businesses will file a return for. They'll collect sales tax from their customers and then remit that back over. But this is business tax, Tennessee's business tax. It's a pretty simple tax. You can see here in the general definition of it that it applies to just privilege of doing business, but there are some exceptions to it. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about who's liable for it, how to register for it, how it ties in with the standard business license. Again, who's exempt from it. There's some credits and deductions that you can file. We'll talk a little bit about filing. We have a whole webinar dedicated to that, but we'll touch on some basics, and then we'll hopefully have some time to go over to our website and show you some resources. So first, we're going to start off with talking about who is liable for business tax. You have to have substantial nexus. We'll discuss that in a minute. And you have to be engaged in certain taxable activities, which again, we'll go over those, and have over 100,000 in gross sales in Tennessee. So if those three items are met, then you're liable for business tax. So we're going to break down what each of those means. And that 100,000, by the way, is a new threshold that goes into effect now. When it goes into effect for businesses with tax years ending 12/31/2023 and later. So that used to be 10,000. So now it's 100,000. That might affect a lot of businesses and taxpayers here on the webinar with us today. So what is substantial nexus? Nexus is basically what has to be met for you to be liable for the tax. Substantial nexus for Tennessee business tax includes being organized or commercially domiciled in Tennessee. That one kind of goes without saying, right? So businesses that are here in Tennessee, or businesses that own or use capital in Tennessee. So that might apply to some out-of-state businesses. Or systematic and continuous business activity in Tennessee that has produced gross receipts attributable to customers in Tennessee, or Brightline presence. So each of these items, we got 4 items here for substantial nexus, and if any one of those is met, then you're considered to have substantial nexus. We're going to explain what Brightline presence here in a minute, and that's going to really apply mainly to some out-of-state businesses, which I saw on the registrations that we have lots of out-of-state folks on here today. So what is Brightline presence? Total Tennessee business receipts exceeding the lesser of $500,000 or 25% of a business's total receipts. Or again, each of these is separated by or here. Any one of these means you have Brightline presence. The middle box here, average value of real and tangible personal property owned or rented and used in Tennessee exceeds either 50,000 or 25% of the average value of all the businesses total real and TPP. Or total amount of compensation paid by business in Tennessee exceeds 50,000 or 25% of the business's total compensation. That has come into play a lot in the past few years since so many people in the workforce work from home now. A lot of people are moving into Tennessee, and businesses that are located out of Tennessee that have compensation paid to employees in Tennessee that exceeds 50,000 or 25% of that total compensation, that means you're going to meet Brightline presence. So again, I'm going to go back a slide here just to recap substantial nexus. So organized or commercially domiciled here, or owning or using capital, or continuous business activity, or Brightline presence. So if one of those is met, then you have substantial nexus. The next thing is you have to be engaged in certain activities. What are those activities? Basically, the sale of tangible personal property in Tennessee or delivered into Tennessee, the sale of a service that is in or delivered into Tennessee. Some services are exempt, we'll talk about that later, or the leasing or renting of tangible personal property that's located in Tennessee. Any of those things, it's pretty broad, but if you have any of those, then you can check that box for having met activities that are subject to business tax. And then the third thing was meeting that gross sales threshold of 100,000 in a fiscal year. So what we're looking at here, just to recap what we just talked about with Nexus, you've got to meet substantial Nexus and be engaged in one of those activities and have over 100,000 in gross sales attributed to any county in Tennessee, and then you're going to be liable for business tax. You'll need to register and file for business tax. We're going to talk about registering here in just a minute. I think that's, no, it's not the next slide, but actually I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll hold off on that thought. Okay, so this is how the business tax and licensing tie in together. Like I said earlier, the business tax and your business license are very closely tied together if you've got a standard license. So this chart here, the far left column, if you want to call it that, is annual gross sales. If you make under 3,000 a year, no business license is required, no business tax required. You don't need just nothing. That is just, you know, good for you. You made $3,000. You don't need any kind of license or pay tax for that. Between $3,000 and $100,000 annually, You would need to obtain a minimal business license from your clerk's office, but no business tax is required. Again, this is new based on some legislation that just passed in 2023. That limit used to be 3,000 to 10,000 for a minimal license and no business tax, but now it's 100. That lets a lot of small businesses off the hook with having to pay business tax in Tennessee. You would have to uh, renew that minimal license directly with your clerk. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So where we come into play here with business tax and the Tennessee Department of Revenue is if your annual gross sales are over 100,000, and that is gross sales, then you're going to need to obtain a standard business license from your city and county clerk if you're in a city that has business license. You will need to file business tax through the Tennessee Department of Revenue, through us. And then when you file and pay that business tax with us, we send clearance information over to the city and county clerk to renew your license. You don't go back to them to renew. Just filing and paying business tax renews a standard business license. If you don't file and pay business tax, then that license will not get renewed by your clerk. So a little more information here about the new threshold. If you have a business tax account, so if you're on here with us today and you already have a business tax account, say you had a standard license before this threshold change, but you have gross sales that are less than 100,000 for this last fiscal year, you'll need to contact us. We sent out a letter to to a lot of taxpayers recently that we think that this will affect. So you might have already made that change, but if you have a business tax account, previously held a standard business license, and are under 100,000 in gross sales for this last fiscal year, the one that just ended December 31st, contact us at, here's our number, 615-253-0600, or you can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov and just let us know that you're not going to meet that $100,000 threshold for this past fiscal year and that you'd like to switch your filing status to not required. If you do that, that current business license that you're looking at, that you had for all of 2023, it's still going to be good until the date printed on that license, until the expiration date on that license. Most of them, it's going to expire on May 15th. When that license expires, then you will just visit your city and or county clerk and obtain a minimal activity license at that point. Hey, Billy.
So, yeah, I just wanted to point out one thing too. Yes, when you contact us, please have your account number, your federal ID number, your social security number, something so we can look up your account properly. We are getting quite a number of these requests in, and some of the ones we get by email are like, I'm Bob Smith and I didn't make $100,000. Well, there's a whole lot of Bob Smiths in Tennessee. That's not going to really help us out. So if you'll give us all that detail when you reach out to us, it'll make it super easy. And we want to be sure that we do this right. Um, just like we want you to not have to pay the business tax when you're not required to, we want you to also understand that you also do have to have a business license if you're required to have a business license. Okay. And like Katie had mentioned in her previous slide there, you're going to need that minimal activity license when you're between 3,000 and 100,000 dollars for your location there within that jurisdiction where you're at that amount. But the ones that are over the $100,000 mark do need that standard license. So just understand that your current license, if you're already registered, is still good. It's fine. You don't have to do anything with that. But you do need to make the adjustment and the decision about updating your situation before that license runs out. And I'm asking all you guys, your thousand some odd people that are online with us here live today, and anybody viewing this, to make sure to do this sooner than later. Okay. Most of you have a license, if you're already in business, that expires on May 15th of this year. Do not wait until May 15th to go to the clerk's office or to reach out to us to make this adjustment. Because what will happen, like it always does, is there will be lots and lots and lots of people involved. Now, we're glad to help everybody out. We will, and we'll work real hard, okay? But when we're inundated with tens of thousands of people all at the same time, life becomes a little harder. So if you can do this sooner than later, in the next month, 6 weeks, something like that, when you get ready to have a little extra time to do this, or now, whatever makes you happy. We want to work with you on that, but I just want to kind of throw that out at you to let you know how busy it is in the tax business in April and May, and this will certainly be extra work, really, for everybody at that point. So just be aware, okay?
Thanks,
Thanks.
Billy. So what you're saying is don't call us on April 15th about this? No. You can if you haven't before then, but try to take care of it before the filing deadline. Um, Again, this is a transition year for us. It's a huge change to business tax, changing this threshold. So if you've got any questions about it or confused about it, you can call us. There's also a link here if you've got the PDF that is to the important notice about this change that came about through the Tennessee Works Tax Act this past year. So we'll talk a little bit more about this when we touch a few more points later on in the presentation. So, okay, business tax registration. First off, obtaining a standard business license from your county or city clerk automatically registers you for business tax. Our systems talk to each other, the cities and the counties. We work very closely with them. When you register at your clerk, they're going to let us know. Our computer systems talk to each other. Not that they always talk 100% correctly, but 99.9% of the time they do. And we know that you've just gotten a license, a standard license. And then you're going to get a letter in the mail from us that says, hey, you're now registered for business tax. So read that letter and make sure you understand it. Some information on that letter you can use to add access to your account in TINTAP. We've got a great webinar about TINTAP basics that you can find in our webinar video archive, and lots of information in our revenue help section on our website about gaining access to your accounts in TINTAP. That's kind of a whole nother thing, but save that registration letter because information from that letter helps you get registered. That letter will also say, if you haven't already been to your clerk's office, go get a license, but because some people do start with us and register for business tax first. And we're just letting them know, if you haven't already, go to the clerk's office. But so if you've been to the clerk's office, you're going to get that letter. I have a link here, which cities require business license. Not all cities in Tennessee require you to have a business license. There's a dashboard that you can get to on our website. So if you've got the PDF of this presentation in front of you, that dashboard, actually, I think it's kind of fun. So I'm going to really quickly go over to it to show it to you. I love our dashboards.
While you're doing that, Katie, let me just mention that that about 230 some odd cities are actually register or require the business tax and the business licensing. And this is because they have passed an ordinance back sometime in the last 4 decades or so, saying that they wish to have business licensing and business tax in their area. If they've never passed it, it doesn't exist. So that's how that happens.
Yeah, most of them do. I don't know how many municipalities there are in Tennessee, but I think most have business tax. I don't know. I could be just making that up. But so I'm on our homepage, tn.gov/revenue. I'm going to go to either taxes here or taxes here on the tile. I'll click on the tile that says taxes. And of course, the most common taxes, business tax. I'm going to click on that. And then it's and this is a good place to show you, in case I run out of time later, a great overview of business tax. You can click on the different due dates and tax rates, registration, licensing, classifications, determining retailer versus wholesaler. We haven't even talked about that yet today. Some of this other stuff, but I'm going to click on tax guidance. This is where you'll find a link over to our tax manual. Great manual. I'll be making lots of references to that in today's presentation. But I'm going to go on down here. You can see what all's available to the business tax dashboard. And this is where you can just hover over the county to find out if business tax is, which cities, which municipalities impose business tax within any given county. So you can see most of them do. There's a few holdouts that don't have business tax in each county. You can also download a printable version of this information by clicking here. So, all right, go back over to
Hey,
the.
Katie, one quick fun fact. Did you
Yeah,
know there are some cities in Tennessee that are in multiple counties? So
right.
you have to be really, really careful if you're talking about registering your location that we have your correct address that's tied into exactly where you pay property taxes, because we want to get that right. The reason we want to get it right is because the majority of the money that we collect on business tax actually ends up in local government.
Mhm.
We send that money to local government, and we want to be sure that we get the right money to the right people. So registration begins that whole process. Okay,
I'm
thanks.
glad you mentioned that, Billy. As he just mentioned, business tax is location based, so it's sales tax. So you're going to need, when you do register, you're going to need to use the address of the business location, not a PO box, not your CPA's office or anything like that. It's if you've got a home-based business, then you have to use that home address. It's just for the tax record. And it's just so that jurisdiction, so that we know what jurisdiction the business is in, so that the money can get allocated where it needs to go. Um, the second way you can register for business tax is by registering a location on TINTAP. I've got a little screenshot here of what it looks like when you already are in your TINTAP account. So if you've already, maybe you have a previous business or something and you're just registering another location or a new one. Within TINTAP, you will go to on the main page, you'll go to more and then manage accounts. And then you can kind of zoom in here on your screen, and it says register a new location. So you would then need to, if you came to us to register a location, whether you did it within TINTAP or without logging on from the main TINTAP page, like just starting a new registration, you'd still need to make sure you go to the city or county office to get your license. All right, I'm going to talk for just a minute about out-of-state businesses that have Nexus in Tennessee. So if you met Nexus according to those first few slides I went through, then you're going to use, an out-of-state location. You're not going to be liable for any city or municipal tax. You're just going to be liable for the state level tax. And you'll register just directly with us. There are some exceptions there, like contractors, but for the most part, out-of-state businesses don't need a license, don't need a business license, even if they make over 100. They won't need a business license. They'll just register for business tax directly with us. Contractors, whole nother deal. We do have a webinar out there that is business tax for contractors, because there are some special rules for contractors that don't really fit the mold of everything else I'm talking about right now. So the webinar is called Business Tax for Contractors. I will tell you that Billy and I are going to be re-recording that soon, because it was recorded and presented before this new law change that really does affect how contractors need to be licensed and how they will source their revenue on the return. So we're going to be re-recording that soon. Be on the lookout for that if you're a contractor. All right, just a brief overview. This is like a lot of stuff on one slide here, but how business tax works. Basically, you've got your gross sales, which are all sales derived from products or services. Your gross sales times the rate, and your rate is going to be based on your classification, your business tax classification, which is based on your dominant business activity. We're going to go into that in just a minute. And it's also based on whether you're a retailer or a wholesaler. That's something you're going to determine when you go to file. Classification is something that you need to figure out when you're registering, but you're not going to know whether or not you're a retailer or wholesaler until you've got a year's worth of sales, right? So it's basically if 50% or more of your sales are retail sales, then you're a retailer. 50% or more are wholesale sales, then you're a wholesaler. It's just a slightly different rate between those two. So there's a few deductions and credits that can offset that. Deductions are going to reduce your tax liability, and credits are going to offset the liability. We're going to briefly touch on those here in a minute. And I'll mention this again. We also have a webinar specifically about filing the return that goes into a lot more detail about the deductions and credits. Oh, actually, I have a link to it here. So if you've got the PDF, this tax due on the far right here, a webinar about filing the business tax return, and a help video on our website. But the business tax return is due on the 15th day of the fourth month following your fiscal year end. Most businesses are set up on a December 31 fiscal year end. If that's the case, then the 15th day of the fourth month is going to be April 15th, which is a tax day that we all have in our brains. If that 15th falls on a weekend or a holiday, it's going to be the next business day. But that's a lot of information, I know. A lot more detail about each of these topics in our business tax manual too, if you're wanting some more definitions and more explanation of these. I know that the gross sales, determining gross sales is a really great section in our manual. A lot of businesses will say, well, I didn't make any money. It's not about net sales. It's not, you're not deducting out what you paid to employees and rent and any of that. It is just gross sales, gross receipts. I think of it this way. Look at every receipt from the entire year of income and just add that up. And again, there's some deductions and credits that can reduce and offset that, but just everything added together. It's a really low rate, y'all. That's another thing too. This slide tells you it's you can look here, class 1A 0.001. The wholesaler rate's even lower. All of these rates are it's super low. So when I say we're taxing your gross receipts, like, whoa, well, it's such a low rate. All right, so we're going to talk for just a minute about choosing classification. That is what is going to determine your rate. You can see here, these are the different classes in that first column. So this is a lot of information. I won't expect you to read all this right now. I'm not going to read it all right now, but just to set it apart, you've got class 1 is in blue here, class 2 in green. It's going to specifically, class 2 specifically list some kind of high dollar tangible personal property like vehicles, clothing, home furnishing, some pretty specific things listed here: coal, wood, ice, cut flowers. I don't know, the legislature just put random things where they put them here. So those are class 2, but also class 2 is a catch-all classification for anything. If you sell tangible personal property that's not listed anywhere else, that's not listed over there in class 1 where food and beer for home preparation consumption are and other stuff there, it's not mentioned specifically there. I'm going to turn on my poll for a second, actually. So it's not mentioned specifically here. We'll talk about 3 in a minute. But there's lots of specific tangible personal property that's in class 3. If you sell something that's not specifically listed somewhere else, then you're a class 2. All right. Class 3, again, has some very specific tangible personal property. Not going to go through this whole list here, but here's what I want you to look at. Services. All services, except for the exempt ones, which we'll mention on the next slide, services all fall into class 3. Class 4 is where contractors are. Class 5, industrial loan and thrift, and natural gas marketers. For big businesses like that, you're going to register directly with the Tennessee Department of Revenue if you're class 5. So before I get to that, just mention you may have a business that sells or does a lot of these things. You may sell, let's say you have I don't know, an example is escaping my mind right now. I like to think of like a gas station. Okay, a gas is going to sell gas at retail, right? They're also going to sell maybe some deli products and some candy that's right over there in 3, tobacco products. Yep. They're going to go, they're going to be registered for business tax based on their dominant business activity, which is probably going to be gasoline for a gas station, just guessing. Look at a restaurant like Cracker Barrel. They sell food. It's a restaurant, but then they also, so prepared food is over there in 2, but they also sell stuff, right? They sell a lot of toys and games, so they're going to go with what their dominant business activity is. Exempt services. So services, as I said, are going to be class 3. There are some services that are specifically exempt from business tax. Now, if these are exempt, then they're not going to need a license, no business taxes due, unless that business is also making sales of other things that are taxable. You can see this list here: accounting, architecture services, banks, building loan associations, services performed by charitable religious organizations, so on and so forth down the line here. If you provide those services, and you can see there's a reference in our law to the SIC, stands for Standard Industrial, what is it? Standard Industrial Classification. It's part of OSHA. There's a link there that specifically mentions which services within each of those kind of general groups are going to be exempt from business tax and business license. But some businesses that provide these services, for example, you see veterinary services is at the bottom of this list here. My vet's office also sells pet food and pet toys and leashes and stuff like that. So the veterinary services are not subject to business tax and license, but the other stuff that they sell would be subject. And again, you're going to have to make sure, figure out where you would fall in terms of gross sales of those taxable items. Under 100, you would just need a minimal business license and not even need to pay business tax for them. But over 100 in taxable items that are sold, you would need a standard license and be liable for business tax. I will mention here, like services performed by charitable and religious organizations you see here, like that's a church. Now, we're going to talk about some other exemptions later, but that are related to charitable organizations. But if a church has, let's say, a bookstore in it that sells books that are not donated, but just resells books, or coffee shop, or actually there's a church here locally that has a restaurant inside of the church. Those sales would be subject to business tax. It's the services performed by charitable and religious organizations that are exempt. So these are the exempt services. Now we're going to talk about exempt entities. Who is just business tax does not apply to these. We've got several pages here. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about this, but there's a lot more information on the excluded entities in our manual. First one we're going to talk about is manufacturers. A manufacturer must have an industrial machinery exemption for sales tax in order to be exempt from business tax. Manufacturers include quarries, gravel and granite quarries, um, recyclers that turn recycled products into new products, like scrap metal dealers. An interesting one with manufacturers to explain here, it includes breweries if the dominant sales are retail, but it includes breweries, but if the retail sales and not manufacturing sales are dominant there, then they would be subject. Cabinet manufacturers and building stock cabinets are exempt, but custom cabinets are not. So for more information about manufacturers and which manufacturers are considered exempt from business tax, a whole section in our business tax manual about that. Trucking companies are exempt from business tax if they offer services to the public, otherwise known as a common carrier. Services rendered outside of that as a common carrier are going to be taxable, except a carrier that has multiple contracts with several companies is considered a common carrier. More info in the manual about that. Just FYI, rideshare drivers and Transpotainment, those party wagons that you see a lot in downtown Nashville and in other cities, those are taxable. That's not considered a trucking company. Any persons who operate a vending machine and exercises the option of paying our gross receipts tax. If you have a vending machine and you do gross receipts tax, you don't need to pay business tax. Newspaper route carriers and peddlers, not subject to business tax. Institutions operated for religious or charitable purposes with respect to profits that are earned from the sale of contributed items. So the example I gave you a minute ago with the church that has a bookstore, if their bookstore is all donated books that people have donated to the church, then still not taxable there. But that's an example of that. 501c3 or 4 entities whose only taxable activity during the tax period is conducted at the Tennessee State Fair or at only one county fair. Persons making sales of rental or rental, of real property that belongs to them. If I sell my home and gross sale of that is over 100, I don't need business tax. My little pointer is kind of going crazy. Radio or TV stations excluded from business tax. Publishers and printers of newspapers and other periodicals are excluded from business tax. Just a few deductions we're going to mention here. So that's what I just mentioned pretty much covers who's liable for business tax and who is not liable for business tax, who's excluded or exempt. Now we're going to dive in just a little bit to the different deductions. What can you deduct from those gross sales in order to reduce your tax liability? Deductions they differ from exemptions in that they must be reflected on the business tax return as amounts deducted from the gross sales. And I think I mentioned this again, but just the second bullet here I want to touch on. Please maintain any invoices and documents to substantiate claims for deductions, or else the deductions will not be allowed. So they're going to be entered on Schedule A of the return. So here are the deductions. We've got sales of services received by persons located in other states. If you've got a service-related business and you go do a job in Georgia or in Mississippi or Kentucky, you can deduct that out on Schedule A. Returned merchandise when the sales price is refunded, that can be deducted out on Schedule A. Sales of tangible personal property in interstate commerce. Now, this is for tangible personal property that you're selling where possession of that item takes place in the other state. So, if you've got a retail store in Tennessee somewhere, and you have make online sales, let's say, and you're selling an item to someone that lives in another state, and you're shipping it to them, and they take possession of that item in another state, then you can deduct it out. If a person from another state comes into your store and buys something and they take possession of it while they're in your store or while they're here in Tennessee, then that deduction cannot be taken. It still stays in your gross sales. Cash discounts allowed and taken on sales. You can see the example there. There's a deduction for that. Repossessions. The portion of the unpaid principal balance in excess of $500 due on tangible personal property repossessed from customers is deductible. That gets a little bit confusing. Repossession stuff does. Our manual does a great job of explaining that. Don't have enough time today to go into that, but I will tell you an industry that is very affected by repossessions is the auto industry, and we are going to be having a webinar in the near future that's dedicated specifically to the auto industry. Our policy and audit people just created a great tax manual that's specific just for automobile dealers. And I'm looking here, I couldn't remember. It is in that webinar is going to be in June, on June 25th. That's when we're going to have a webinar that is tax issues for Tennessee automobile dealers. So a lot of businesses deal with repossessions, but lots more info about that will be discussed. We'll go into more detail about that when we have that webinar in a couple months. All right, amount allowed as trade-in value for any articles sold. Another deduction that applies to a lot of auto dealers, right? The credit will not be allowed for trade-ins unless the item traded in is of like kind and character. So a car for a car, can't trade in a sofa for a car, or put that towards your car and have it be counted as a deduction for trade-in value. Also, bad debts written off during the reporting period are a deduction you can take. Amounts paid by a contractor to a subcontractor holding a business license or contractor's license, those are deductible. There's a whole worksheet that's called Schedule C that you can file with the return. That goes for Class 4 contractors only. Contractors who basically are dealing with real property. There are miscellaneous federal and state excise taxes that are also deductible on the business tax return. There's a line for other deductions not taken elsewhere. There's a few things that can be there. Accommodation sales, when a business does have some casual and isolated sales of tangible personal property, things like that, but it's not a huge catch-all there. And I'm going to reiterate here that it's very important to maintain records for all deductions taken. All right, we're getting kind of low on time. I want to leave enough time for questions, and I talk too much, sorry. When to file business tax. As I mentioned earlier, it's due on the 15th day of the 4th month following the fiscal year end. Now that business license expiration date is going to be 1 month later. So you can see on the little example that we have on this slide here, this is assuming a fiscal year end of 12/31. That business tax return is going to be due on April 15th, which is the 15th day of the 4th month, and the license is going to expire 30 days later on May 15th. A lot of people get confused by this. They'll look at their business license and see that it expires on May 15th, and they wait till May 15th to file their business tax return, which is fine, but you're going to have some penalty and interest that's going to accrue for not filing it timely. So, also, there's no option for a filing extension for business tax, and there are sometimes extreme circumstances, natural disasters and stuff like that, where that extension will be granted, but it's not common. Okay, just a few slides here on the return. The screenshots you're going to see here are assuming you've already logged into TINTAP, you've already clicked on File Your Business Tax Return. So we're kind of skipping forward right here. Lots more details in the webinar that we have dedicated to this topic, to filing the business tax return. But I just wanted to point out a few things for y'all. So what you're going to see once you open your business tax return on TINTAP, which I will note, online filing is required on TINTAP. So what you're looking at here, and you can zoom in by clicking the little plus button. I'm going to zoom in myself here. What you're looking at is going to be the a location ID. You may have several locations in Tennessee. That one location ID is going to cover your city and your county return, though. You can see this business is going to be for Davidson County and Nashville. Once you open it up, both jurisdictions are going to be on that one return. One other thing I want to point out here for you is that if you get to this point and you see a location on your return that looks fishy, don't think maybe it's for a business that you thought you closed, but maybe not. Or at this point, if you see a location for a business where you are not meeting that that new $100,000 threshold, stop and reach out to us because we can help you fix it. Another reason to not procrastinate filing the return is so that you can kind of take care of that kind of stuff beforehand. Hey, if you're on this webinar or listening to this right now or watching the video, go into your TINTAP account right now and just click on business tax and make sure, go in like you're going to file the return. You can always cancel out of it and just see what's listed there. See what locations are listed there, because that's what we have on file is the locations you're going to see listed here. If you did want to just see that, then you could just cancel out of it, right? Click the little cancel button. But to open the return, you click on that hyperlink for the location. So if you've got multiple locations, you'll do that multiple times. But you would click into the return by clicking on that, and the little red exclamation point there just tells you that there's something missing on that return. Like maybe you haven't even started it yet, or maybe there's just something missing on it. If you see that a little red exclamation point, then go back into it and see what you're missing. All right, so when you start the return, again, if you want to zoom in here to see this a little bit better, the first things you're going to see is the very first question is going to ask you, are you a retailer or a wholesaler? And that's where you have to choose one or the other. You can't get away with not choosing one. You'll get stopped. You won't be able to submit it. So this is where you choose retailer or wholesaler. That county is already plugged in. That's based on the address you gave us and the rate also. Same with the city. It's going to be already plugged in based on the information you gave us and the class. But do you have gross sales of services or products to report? You'll see this little asterisk there. That means it is required. Anywhere on the return, as you're scrolling through the return, where you see a little asterisk, you have to answer yes or no. That's one of the most common things that when we get calls into our call center where people are kind of stuck in this annoying loop of not being able to submit their return. A lot of times it's just that they failed to answer yes or no to one of these questions. So once you populate yes there, and once you click yes there, it will populate the rest of the return. And just a few things that you'll see when you first populate the return, these questions come up. Do you have any deductions to report? If you choose yes there, a Schedule A is going to populate for you, and then you can fill in your deductions. If you click no deductions, a schedule will not populate there. Did you pay personal property tax to the county and city? Now, this is the one credit that I'm going to discuss here because it's a good credit to take if it's applicable to you, and it's on the main part of the return. So what this personal property tax is, this is not a real estate tax. This is a tax that counties and cities impose on all property that is owned or held by a business to operate. So like furniture, fixtures, vehicles owned by anything that your business owns to operate, anything, not real estate, but thing, your county and city are going to send it. A lot of times it's called a personalty tax. Personal property tax is going to be sent by, it's going to be paid to the local jurisdictions. But here's what you have to know about that for this return. On the business tax return, the amount entered for personal property tax cannot be more than 50% of the total tax due. So let me give you an example there. Let's say your total tax due is $100. Keep numbers simple here. And you paid $500 in personal property tax to the county. You can only claim credit for 50% of no more than 50% of what the taxes due. So you in this example, you could only claim $50 of personal property tax. More information about that in our manual too, if you need more information about that. All right, so this is really important for businesses to understand how to actually close. It's not just as simple as closing your door and closing up your books and everything. You need to close with several different places, including the Tennessee Department of Revenue. If you are closing all of your locations, then you need to reach out to us. You can do it on TNTAP and then file a final return. The law says you need to do that within 15 days of closing. If you're just closing some of your locations, again, you still need to do it within 15 days, but you can wait until the normal due date to file and pay the return. You can see if you want to zoom in here, this is a snip of being in your TNTAP account and in the business tax portion, additional actions and licenses here. That's where one of the options, once you click on that, will say close account. You just need to be, I always want to warn people, be very cognizant of what date you use as closure. Now, if you are one of these businesses who is not going to be meeting this $100,000 gross sales threshold and no longer needing to file business tax, we don't want you to go about it by going in here and closing your account. Please reach out to us so we can just change your filing status to filing not required. All right, well, we are at the end of our slides here. We've got a little bit of time left. Lisa, I'm going to let you kind of talk to them a little bit about all these various ways to follow and contact us, and I'm going to turn on the chat now so you can put your questions in. So we've got a little bit of time for that.
All right. So there's a lot of ways to reach out to us. If you would follow us on Facebook, Twitter, we do have email updates. We have a lot of really good YouTube videos also that explain a lot of this information and things that you may need. Instagram, LinkedIn, our website. Also, if you look down on this slide, you see the email us, the revenue.support@tn.gov. If you have locations that need to be changed to minimal activity because of the new business tax law, if you would, you can email us there. It's really important, as Billy said earlier, if we have a account number, if you will, in the subject, when you're filling that out, if you will, put in the subject line, it's for business tax. That way the people who work that area specifically can pull them quicker. And get back to you and get this taken care of. We're really glad to help you that way. We also have the tax helpline. This is our general call center, the 615-253-0600. When you call in that line, it will give you options of which way to call. If you are calling about business tax, you will hear that prompt for business tax. Just click that number and it will go to the people who handle the business tax calls, and we'll be glad to get that your information and get that taken care of for you. If you look down there too, the support staff were available 8 to 4:30, and that is that local time, so East Tennessee time, and then Central time, so it's wherever you are. Also, if you see, there's also a link there to see where our office locations are. We have places that you can come in for help if you need help in person. The regional offices are open Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 4:30 in that area. We also have a place online that you can contact us to make an appointment if you want to make sure, and we'll call you right back and we'll get your appointment set up. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are the regional offices that are across the state, and that's when we're open. But we are glad to help you any of these ways. Whatever way is most convenient for you is how we'll help you.
We're the helpfulest people in the world. Trust us.
That's right. Lots of good
Right?
questions in chat here, y'all.
Oh yeah. You turn
Lots
that chat button on, Katie, is like the
Bam.
world. The
Yeah.
whole
I'm
world
glad
just
we've got
hit us.
time to go through a couple of questions, a few questions.
Yeah, we
First
already know
one,
we can't get to even the
no.
ones, all of these, but, and we
You can reach out to us
apologize.
here, right where Lisa just told you.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
who to
So you
talk
see
to.
the contact information on there too, and a lot of you need to hit us up there too. I want to just talk real quick, y'all, about a key concept that Katie brought up earlier in the presentation, sort of towards the first, and it's about this whole idea of people who are already registered with us, and what do you do to change things? What if I don't owe this tax anymore? I'm under that $100,000. It's easy. You see the first bullet right there, where we give you the phone number or the email address. Reach out to us and let us know. Hey, my account number, remember that, is such and such, or my federal ID number is this, or my social is this. Give us that information. Let us know. Hey, change me over so I don't owe this tax anymore. Okay. I did see one person asked, well, what happens if I go over $100,000 in 24? What if I do that? Reach out to us again. Let us switch you back. Okay. What happens if I change my classification? Reach out to us. Let us know. We'll change it. What if I change my address? Guess what I'm going to say?
Reach out to us. Let
Let
us
us
know.
know. Or call Lisa Rousseau's cell phone number. I'll give that to you later. No, I won't either. But anyway, honestly, y'all, communication is the biggest part of this whole thing. Uh, we're doing this times tens of thousands of businesses that we know are going to be under this $100,000 change from the 10,000 that Katie had mentioned before. So we know it's a big deal. We did send out letters. We sent out notices on the 10-tap system. Okay, so if you sign into the 10-tap system, you'll see the notice there too. We're working also on a couple of different things with our IT folks to alert folks differently on 10-tap when you're filing, that there is a new law out there, because we do want everybody to be sure of what they're doing there too. But one thing, just real quick, if you haven't figured it out yet, you'll probably figure it out pretty soon. For 23, for last year, as you look at last year's records, for those of you that are already registered with us, there's a decision that you can make. And the decision is this: you can go ahead and keep filing and making that payment of business tax. The decision was made that if you choose to leave it alone, you can leave it alone. Now, what you'll do is you'll pay that tax for the year of 23 in the same way that you have before. And the county clerk and the city clerks, or whoever you owe, will actually send you that renewal license. Okay. That'll work fine. No problem. You don't have to do anything. All right. But we would really strongly consider, or recommend rather, that you consider reaching out to us if you're under the $100,000, and let us get you converted over to the license only account. Okay. Meaning that you're a person who actually only gets a license with the county clerk, with the city recorder, and people like that. When you get that license, you pay them $15 each. Okay. If you have a minimal activity license, you have to renew it every year with the county clerk and with the city clerk moving forward. Okay. If you close your business, okay, listen carefully. Here we go. We don't know that. You have to tell us, right, Lisa? Is that right? Yes, she's shaking her head. So we got to know. So let us know. And we'll say, hey, they closed their business. We'll shut down your records here. We'll make a note on the system that John Doe contacted us. Previous owner of this business said they were closed as of this date. Please close this record, and you'll be done. Okay. Because not renewing licenses and not paying taxes when you are obligated to do so, you can't just stop doing things. There's a way to get out of things. And that goes not only for business tax, but for sales tax, franchise and excise tax, and all the other taxes that we have too. Is that right, Katie? You're
I was
muted.
muted. Yes, yes, yes.
Yep.
That is correct. You're always
Okay.
right, Lily.
I
You're
just
right
wanted
about
to bring
everything.
that up. What else do you think we ought to talk about?
We've got so many great questions in here. I don't even know where to start. The person said, if you're located in one Tennessee city, but we did some business in another city, do we need to file in that other city also? And that's a great question. Okay, I don't know. Where do I start here? Lisa, do you want to take this one?
So the taxes in the other city are going to depend on how much was sold in that city.
Also, if it's a contractor.
If they're a
Oh,
contractor. Now,
contractor.
just
I'm
a
sorry, I
regular
didn't hear that part.
business, yeah, any other classification, you just need to have a business tax account that's based on your home base. It's based on the location of your business. If you're service related and don't have a brick and mortar, just your home. So let's say you're going to do a service in another city, another county, unless you're a contractor, that's a whole nother ballgame. You'll just file it on your gross sales.
Mhm.
Right,
Sales
and
fees
the $100,000 is important there too, guys, because if that contractor was just doing about a little bit, maybe I don't know, make up something, 20,000 in another county or city, that money all goes back to that home location in Tennessee. Okay. Now the reason that this is this way, just to let you know real quick, is that the Tennessee legislature passed these laws on contractors because there's a lot of money, as you know, in contracting with building residential or commercial property. Okay. So because of that, the legislature wanted each of these counties and cities where this activity is taking place to receive the tax money from that. Remember how I told you how important it is to register properly? Well, that's the reason, okay, for contractors. But for all the other businesses, the service-based businesses and people that you might have customers that come from other counties and cities to your location where you're actually located. You're just going to be charging or filing that return based on that location there too. And of course, if you have more than one actual location in a city or a county, you're going to register each of those locations individually. Okay. So just that easy. Hey, Katie, does this class qualify for CPE?
Yes, Billy, it does. When you leave the webinar, there's going to be a short survey, and I was going to get to that here in a minute anyway, especially since we've come to the end of the hour. One of the questions on the survey, first it asks you, how did we do? Do you have any ideas for any future webinars? Please give us that input. We love hearing from you and love having that input. But the last question says, do you need CPE credit? And you just answer yes or no to that, or you don't have to answer it at all. But if you do need CPE credit, you'll want to answer yes to that.
And Katie loves that because she gets to be the one that sends you all that information.
I don't
And when
mind
there's
it at all.
1,000 of you on the call or on the deal, that makes Katie likes that. So send her a lot of
Okay.
stuff.
I do. I don't mind it at all. There are so many questions and there's so many good ones. I really hate to not even have the time here. But again, this was doing a big basic webinar. We knew that it was going to take right up close to the hour for this one anyways. If we didn't get to your question, which most of you we didn't, please explore our resources, call us, email us, go back to this for just a minute, call us at 615-253-0600 or email revenue.support@tn.gov. I would also really recommend you to going to that manual. I'm going to take an extra minute just to go ahead and show you exactly where the manual is because it is exhaustive. It will answer, I haven't looked through every question because there's a lot, but I bet it answers your question. And there's an easy way to search it.
I just put
So,
a link out there again in chat for the
oh, good to
manual.
it. So I'm going to get to it by going to just 'cause I want to show you the tax page again. So taxes there or there. Going to click on business tax. Lots of links here, but to get tax guidance and tax manual, it is awesome. Let's see. Click on it here. 171 pages. You can do Control F and type in any search, any keyword. I saw a good question here about marketplace facilitators. Click the word marketplace facilitator, words marketplace facilitator there, and you'll come up with everything that business tax has to say about that topic. So if you can't find the answers or just want to go ahead and call us, we'd love to take your call. We do want to let you know before we say goodbye here about our upcoming webinars. Next month, we're doing taxation of hemp-based cannabinoids. That was another new law that passed in 2023 that is in effect now. And there's a new schedule on our sales tax return for hemp-based
This will not be a
cannabinoids.
demonstration during the
No.
event.
We
Okay.
don't care what you do,
We're
but we
going
won't.
to, you can do what you want, but we cannot demonstrate that.
In March, we will have a webinar on recent F&E law changes, that especially that Tennessee Works Tax Act, the same bill that changed everything for business tax and gave the some tax holidays and stuff. There was some big F&E law changes that came into effect this past year too that will affect all of you filing for 2023 coming up. So that's going to be a great one. We also have our new business quarterly workshop coming up on April 3rd. You get to all of these by going to our, I'm going to take you one more time as we leave here over to our taxpayer education page, going to the top here, tn.gov/revenue, taxpayer education and tax webinars. This is where you register, where you registered for today, where you'll register for the future ones that we've got. We only post one link at a time to register. But that's also where you're going to find all of our webinar video library. When Billy was talking about the new threshold change, I brought up the PDF of the webinar we did a few months ago about the business tax law change. New business workshops, this is where you'll register for the upcoming new business workshop. We have a video of last month's. And we also, this is new, we have a Spanish version of the new business workshop. So that's just a recorded version there, both of these. Anything else that y'all want to add before we say goodbye?
I just wanted to point out, somebody had asked, can we send notification when we redo the contractor webinar, when Katie and I do that again? We cannot do that. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to capture that information. What I want you to do, if you, in maybe about, let's say 2 weeks, go out to our website and check that, and you'll probably find that done. I think Katie and I can get that done within the next 2 weeks.
We can ask our PR people to maybe do a Facebook post about it or Twitter or so. And then if you follow us, you would get a notification about that. I can't promise that they would because it's tax time. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but that's
Just
another
one
good reason to
final-
follow us.
One final reminder about CPE, which is continuing professional education, for those of you that need certificates for that, for your licensure. That's what that is. Someone asked that question, and the link comes up as soon as you exit this webinar. You'll be doing a survey and you'll make that request for your CPE at that time. Okay. I think
All
that's
right.
about all we can say, other than answering the rest of the world's questions. But hit us up
That's right.
online, on the email address and the phone number that we talked about before. Okay. So
All
thanks
right.
everybody for
Thanks,
joining us
y'all.
today.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
See
Thank
y'all
you,
soon.
everybody. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.